Her fingers into his back. He further limited his interest to little girls. They were usually manageable. His sexuality was anything but lewd. His patronage of little girls smacked of innocence.
Can I ask you what it is that your topic is about?
Yes, I was just reading an exemplar text from the Common Core State Standards website.
Could you please proceed with your comments, please?
Yes, I am. I work only through the Lord. He sometimes uses me to help people. To me, this is porn. But on the Common Core website, it specifically says, this is an exemplar text under Appendix B, the reading list for grade 11. The book is called The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I don't understand why we would have 11th graders reading this. I've had to read it several times just to have the nerve to come up here and do it right now in front of you. It's disgusting. And especially, I was hoping the 11th grade English teacher would stay to hear this. This is my first time at one of these meetings. We have a second grader and a preschooler in Western Boone School Corporation. I didn't really know anything about the Core until we started first grade, and I could not help him with his math homework. We were getting it wrong, and I've got a bachelor's degree in criminology. And it's not like it was a long time ago. I just graduated in 2010. I'm afraid of what the Common Core is going to do to my family. I don't understand why every other state has to come and be all the same. I understand being all this. I don't know why we have to be common. I'll put it that way. And if all the other states want to be the same, fine. Just have them come up and meet Indiana standards, what we had, instead of having ours drop down to meet them. One other question I do have, is there any rules anywhere that says the textbooks that are published has to have truthful information? Because I've looked at some of Lebanon's schools' textbooks, and they're full of inaccurate information, and nobody's saying anything about it. Nobody's calling them on it. They can rewrite history all they want, and nobody does anything. Nobody checks. My last comment is, I met you, Glenda, at the State Fair, and I asked, where can we go to ask questions about the Common Core if we have questions as parents? And the only person you said I could go talk to would be the president of the Indiana PTA, is the only person that you knew of at the time. And I've tried. I actually met her at this second hearing for the state legislature, and she did say she was going to be able to come and talk to us. We haven't been able to set a date yet, but I'm trying to get a large group of parents together so they can go and ask questions of what exactly this Common Core is from the people who wrote it. And there is no answers. The people who came to the hearings at the State House, they were from here, from there. Nobody actually from the Common Core standards ever showed up. We can't ask them any questions. And I just want to know why, who? Who can I go ask about my child's education? Because they seem not to exist. The National Governors Association, I found their offices in DC in July by accident. And I asked the receptionist about Common Core. They don't do anything with education. They never have. And they don't know why people keep thinking that they have something to do with the Common Core. But once again, I have nobody to ask. Their name's all over it, but they say they're not part of it. So now where am I left?
Thank you, Jackie. Roger Harding.
If Good morning. If it's okay with you, I have nothing to say about Common Core school grading. I've had a chance to read over the social studies standards that's going to be voted on, and they are excellent. And I say thank you. I've taught 20 years at the Benjamin Harrison Presidential Site. I'm the Vice President of Education, and every year I teach about 10,000 school children from all over the state, and the language that's in the new revised social studies standards is what I've been hoping for years. It really validates what we do as a partner to augment education in the classroom. It talks about having the kids familiar with artifacts and visiting historic places. Now, to that, as I was reading through them, there's a lot of overlap for Benjamin Harrison. Immigration, conservation. Harrison was the first president to set aside 13 million acres of forest land. All these things in the role of government, historic competency, history, all those things have overlap to Harrison. And he's mentioned in example 4.1.9. And coming into the bicentennial, I just kind of think it'd be nice to have Indiana's only elected president mentioned more than just an example. So if you could do all K through 12, that'd be great. But save that. Fourth grade and second grade are strong things. I will not read verbatim what I gave you in the handout. We say the Pledge of Allegiance because of Benjamin Harrison. That came to when Harrison was president in 1892. All of these issues still are relevant today. And so I just think coming into the bicentennial and that you're revising social studies standards, I just think Indiana's only president could stand a little bit more higher visibility in the state standards. Last thing is on the back page of your handout. To kind of further my point, I understand science, math, and language arts are impressive, but our latest Civic Health Index, we ranked 48th in the United States. Thank God for Arkansas and Mississippi. But we only have a 39% voter turnout, and I think that's profane. And it has more to do than just teaching kids basic government as a senior. I think you have to do it almost in a Saxon approach. It needs to happen at every grade level. I understand reading, arithmetic, all that's important, but I think historical literacy leads to discernment. I think it goes to good value judgments, and I think those are things that employers look for, ability to self-start, self-educate, and I would just encourage you to not forget the social studies. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Smith.
Hello, I'm speaking for Dawn Wooten, who could not be here. This is her testimony, so I'm reading it from her perspective. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dawn Wooten, and I am adjunct instructor of English at Indiana University, Purdue University, at Fort Wayne, and Indiana Tech. I have been teaching remedial English, freshman composition, and advanced composition for 10 years. I hold a Master's of Arts in English with a focus in rhetoric and composition, a Bachelor's of Art in English, and a Bachelor of Science in Business Management. Common Core standards were brought fully to my attention last year. My 6th grade daughter came home with a mathematics assignment that required her to find the volume of an object. In my years of middle school, I was taught the various formula for finding volume of an object by its shape. The assignment asked my daughter to take a rectangular prism, deconstruct it, label each side, add those sides together, and then the text gave her the volume formula of length times width times height. This abstract method was confusing for her and to me. I certainly understood what the writers of the text were trying to achieve, going beyond the formula to a concept understanding of volume. But this method ultimately aggravated my daughter so much that she was reduced to tears. When I gave her the formula, she said, "Why couldn't they just tell us that? That's easy." This is an example of the creators of Common Core ignoring Piaget's stages of development. An 11-year-old does not possess the cognitive ability to work with abstract concepts. One reason that Common Core is not an appropriate set of standards for the education of our children is that the standards do not fall in line with the proper cognitive development timeline of the children's brains. The purpose of education is to prepare our children to be successful in life, not just for job training or for college. Each child should have the opportunity to meet their fullest potential, and this cannot happen with Common Core because it takes a one-size-fits-all approach to education, and every child is different. Common Core strives to make sure that our kids are college and career ready. Both employers and universities want graduates who can think critically, take initiative, and use knowledge they have gained in school to continue successfully no matter what path they choose. Common Core standards do not make this possible. Common Core emphasizes skills over knowledge, information over insight. According to the revised publisher's criteria for the Common Core state standards in English, language, arts, and literacy, grades 3 through 12, quote, publishers should be extremely sparing in offering activities that are not text-based. The criteria also states that the text should be central and surrounding material should be included only when necessary so as not to distract from the text itself. This type of learning can only create mindless automatons who can parrot back information they have read. How are these students supposed to pass mandated tests when they are taught to rely on the books for all their information instead of being taught how to integrate that knowledge into their thinking?
Janet, pardon me, I noticed that you've got many pages there to read. It might be possible for us to actually make copies and get it to everybody so that we have the written document
Okay.
in the essence of time,
Okay,
unless you are like at the end.
I'll try to read a little quicker.
Thank you.
These statements make it clear that the Common Core creators want students to focus on only the material that exists in the textbooks and have been designed specifically for these standards. This is a frightening concept. The Common Core creators want to create the standards, tie federal funds to acceptance of the standards, and then ensure that the textbooks purchased by the schools say only what the Common Core creators want them to say. When did it become standard practice for the state of Indiana to relinquish its sovereignty to the federal government or one of its initiatives? Along with these concerns is the issue of telling teachers how to teach. When we English instructors teach drama, for example, it's important that the entire play be analyzed. Characterization, plot, literary techniques, setting, and social and moral messages. The criteria demands that the standards for reading literature specifically require students to observe different productions of the same play to assess how each production interprets evidence from the script. Drama, poetry, and fiction are not about evidence. They are artistic representations of that issue in society and how human beings deal with those issues.
Thank you, Janet. If you would like us to make copies of that, I can have staff go do that.
Okay.
Because I know you have many, many more pages. Laura, can you get somebody to?
I don't think I've taken as much time as some have, but I will do that.
Thank you very much. I know it seems like it's a long time, a short time when you're up there. Melanie, you are the last speaker today. Melanie Wright.
Good afternoon. My name is Melanie Wright. I am a teacher at Daleville Community Schools. I've had the privilege of teaching for 26 years in Indiana, North and South Carolina, and I'm very active with the educators in House District 35. Had a chance to work with them quite a bit over the past 2 years. And I felt very compelled to come down today and just let you know how the radical changes that have happened since 2011 have really affected us inside the school walls and the ditches speak. At that time, it was so fast and so furious. And you know, when you evoke change on a large system, it takes a while for it to work out the kinks. And so at the time, I was in collaborative negotiations with our school superintendent, Paul Garrison. And at the time, a lot of the changes with SB 575 came through and SB 1 as well. And so we had to just halt all those proceedings at the time. And so that was just very frustrating. We felt very shut out of the conversation at the time. What I have noticed in this past year is that I feel a resurgence of hope with Superintendent Ritz because I've had the opportunity to hear her speak several times. This past week, I heard about her three-pronged approach to approaching an issue at a state level and also through the regional outreach directors, and then also through the local districts to really address the needs of children. And it is just my hope, and I know in our federal political environment and our state and our local one, that it's just not collaborative anymore. I mean, collaboration is seen as a bad word, and I take such great pride in being a teacher leader and being able to offer that collaboration. But I also knew every time I negotiated with the superintendent that I couldn't go and not have my facts before me, because then I was not doing my job as a teacher representative. So I do understand the nature of that collaboration. I just, I hope, just as Dr. Oliver mentioned before, and a couple of other speakers have mentioned, and as I've heard, Superintendent Ritz state before, I just hope that we can work together for the children, because I think that's what they really need. One point I would like to impress upon everybody is I would love to see if we could bring in superintendents, principals, teacher leaders from really effective school corporations who are really doing the turnaround, tackling the poverty, getting the test results up. And I think that we can look at their data and just see what they're doing to make that work. And I think that would be advantageous to all of us. Maybe that could be applicable to other situations as well. I do think there's a difference between the rural schools and the medium-sized school corporations and our larger ones. And because, they're microcosms of the community around them, I feel like there's different needs that need to be addressed there. So perhaps if we all come together and get more voices to the table, I think that would really help the education of our students. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We are ready for discussion. We have the turnaround operators, I believe, that are present. Ed Power, are you ready with your presentation? We have no best practices for today. In the essence of time. There's plenty of best practices, but we're not highlighting any today. Thank you very much. No, didn't cancel them. Just didn't put them on the agenda. Thank you very much. I might make some comments while we're getting ready. You're going to see the templates start to be used for the turnaround operators as well as for the lead partners. I read through all of these templates, and I'm going to be requesting that my outreach group actually try to hone in and get some more specificity to some. Some I felt did a more thorough job than others, and so we're going to be working on that as we go forward with this brand new template.
I guess you can pull the original PowerPoint. For some reason I didn't carry it over. I apologize for that.
I believe you have a copy of their presentation.
Thank you. Superintendent, Board, good morning. My name is Tiffany Kaiser. I'm the Chief of Staff for Ed Power. I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer and Chancellor, Mr. Marcus Robinson.
Good morning.
We're here to present highlights on our snapshot for our first year of turnaround work in Arlington Community High School for the 2012-2013 academic year. Let me go back here. Just as as you know, and just as an update for the stakeholders in the community, under statute, the Indiana Department of Administration, acting on behalf of the Indiana Department of Education, requests proposals for the turnaround school work. Ed Power is asked and entertained to participate in the rigorous process. In the fall of 2012, we were fortunate to sign a contract with the Department of Education to act as the turnaround school operator for Arlington High School. During Ed Power's operation year, priority areas were presented along with action steps, which culminated in the school's improvement plan, otherwise known as Deliverable 4. The school improvement plan created a roadmap for turnaround for Arlington High School using effective practices incubated within Ed Power, particularly within our flagship Charles A. Tinley Accelerated School, as well as national systems. As articulated in the school turnaround plan, priority areas were around safety and security for both scholars and staff, data-driven and ongoing instruction for every scholar, and training and coaching of teachers. This has been distilled at the building level into a common speak where we focus on our big three, which is culture, attendance, and academics. This is just an infographic to demonstrate how we work at the network level at EdPower with the building level administrators, exceptional team to accomplish this work. This is another infographic that articulates sort of our strategic process. The work of turnaround, as you know, is not for the meek. It's incredibly difficult, it's arduous, it's very nuanced. And so there has to be a lot of attention around our systems and our processes. How do we codify best practices, both from national systems and what we've incubated within our charter work? And then how do we continue to refine and implement? So this is sort of a cycle that we mirror at the network level. We certainly learned on the charter side of the house, but something that we're definitely imbuing within the space at Arlington High School. I'm going to break down as we go over through the data, because I think just seeing ISTEP scores is not enough for you, and quite frankly, not enough for the public in this very, very difficult work of turnaround. So if we look at culture, there's a breakdown, a disaggregation of what we face in the first year of our turnaround work. To isolate, because this data is so big, we've isolated on the big three and the little three. You'll see the big three in red. We saw a lot of infractions last year around disruption, tardies, and just a lack of following systems. It was very clear that the structure needed to be reset. There was a severe need for that. We also saw in our data the little three, which was the dress code. You may or might not know that we offered 4 uniforms free of charge to every scholar at Arlington High School. We felt like neutralizing the culture was paramount, and using uniforms is a quick way to neutralize the playing ground and to hit culture head on. We also noticed a lot of horseplay. The facility is 380,000 square feet under roof. 560,000 square feet if you include the campus. And so that's a lot of real estate to cover. There's a lot of bodies who have opportunities to roam. And so really cutting down on the transitional spaces is another extension of that culture. So retraining, resetting, how do you move? How do you communicate? What is volume? What's your sensitivity to volume? When are you allowed to move in this space, et cetera? And furthermore, what undergirds that and what predicates that action is that staff are properly trained and staff are held accountable, right? So back to that big three in that cycle. Is this working? Is this not working? If it is, let's blow it up and let's scale it. The next is inappropriate speech. I won't belabor that, but really cracking down on that. The Chancellor and CEO talks a lot about verbal terrorism. We can't allow for scholars to be threatened or bullied, be it physically or verbally. So those psychological spaces where scholars are terrorized is a non-negotiable in our space. Next is an articulation of our suspensions versus expulsions for all grades at Arlington High School. You'll see as part of the culture, we have to continuously hold the line on what is acceptable conduct and how we build what we call habits of opportunity for scholars. And so we do not tolerate a lot of incongruence to our mission, which is to prepare all our scholars for college. And so if scholars move through the space and they're academically successful, yet they don't know how to carry themselves, that is a disservice, not only to those scholars, but to the community. So this reflects our enforcement. You'll see that there's a radical decline. And so as the enforcement began to be set, scholars began slowly, and we're still working on that moment where the culture turns from adults mandating a certain behavior from scholars into that moment where scholars begin to self-police themselves. So you'll see that decline in this graph. A couple of key responses, just to quickly go over. Continue to support the leaders and the scholars to create a safe, respectful, and productive learning environment. Be intentional in creating discipline philosophy that is solely based on fostering teaching and acknowledging positive social behavior. Creating an atmosphere in which scholars truly believe they are gifted and talented. So holding that level of rigor both culturally and academically is paramount. We will keep scholars connected to the school during out-of-school suspension. So I think it's very, very necessary as scholars leave the space, they don't leave their responsibilities. So deploying a social worker, deploying counselors, deploying support so that the guardian, the caregiver at home, as well as the scholar understands, even though they're outside of the space because they made poor choices, doesn't negate the fact that they're still obligated to their academics. So really pushing that. Next is transparency with discipline data. Really encouraging the administrative team to be very transparent about their data to their staff. We've moved to an end goal. If you look in our deliverable 4, and it's noted in this presentation, the links below. If you look in our deliverable 4, we're looking for 20% reduction in disciplinary incidents. Also pushing for RTI, which is a sort of hand in glove with supports. So as scholars are outside the space, they're getting supports. And we're also training our teachers preventatively through the RTI process to recognize through their data and through their systems that scholars, if they have severe needs, which they do at Arlington High School, both academically and culturally, if they have severe needs, it is your responsibility. It would behoove you to refer them to the system so they can get further support. Furthermore, we have a streamlined system where they have to communicate the supports that they're giving. So we're not creating an ecology where we're promoting deficit thinking. What we are doing is we're uprooting a paradigm which previously existed that said it was okay to be deficit in thinking and blame that scholar for not having the requisite skills, either academically or culturally or both, to succeed. The next is reduction in tardies and absences. In deliverable 4, we also articulate the baseline year, which I'll go into next in attendance, and we want to see a 30% reduction in that, getting us to about a 90% attendance rate. Now, the state average, as you know, is 95%. We are operating in a space where scholars were allowed to come and go, were allowed to attend or not attend, and so the work is severe, if I can be quite candid, but the scholars are exceptional and the team is more exceptional, and we're really excited about the work we're doing. I just don't want to unintentionally communicate the difficulty of doing the work with fidelity. Next is attendance. Just a quick brief shot to sort of tease out what I was speaking of on attendance. You'll see here a quick snapshot disaggregated by grades. And so you'll see these spikes, 7th grade, so we have a lot of incoming scholars who need to be reset. We had a lot of loss of 8th graders. So as they matriculated from 8th grade in the observation year to 9th grade, a lot of scholars chose to go elsewhere. Lost 20% of our scholars, 181 scholars, but we also gained that same number back. So there was a high level of transience, particularly at the 8th, 9th, 10th grade level. So there are a lot of scholars figuring out, what do I want to do? There are a lot of parents and guardians figuring out what I want to do. Certainly, phrases like turnaround or takeover can be really looming for parents. And so it took about that semester, well, I would say most of the academic year last year, for parents to start to sort of understand and process what that meant and to reflect that processing through the choices they made or that their child or the child they were caring for made. Another picture, percentage-wise, disaggregated by data. So you'll see that the overall average was 76.83%. As articulated in the school improvement plan, deliverable 4, it states that the first year will be a baseline year, the second year will shoot for 90%. We'll certainly be in conversation with the mayor's office as our oversight body and how to recalibrate that if we feel like that's an overshot, that's not a realistic goal. Just some takeaways. We know that we need to continue to hold our leadership accountable, so they hold teachers accountable. Yes, Mr. Secretary. Sure.
On the attendance, are the same students responsible for a lot of the missed days?
Generally speaking, yes.
In other words, it's a lot of students just go, they're 90%, but there's a certain cohort that are creating a lot of these absences.
Yes, sir. Good question.
Okay.
Broadly speaking, yes. It's a little different when you look at the transients, and that kind of skews the data a little bit. Also, last year we had 32% exceptional learners, so scholars with IEPs, and so there was a lot of transients in who had an IEP, who came in, who left, which can exacerbate the issue depending on the severeness of their needs. But I think blanketly, yes, broadly, that's correct.
On all of these, you're still settling in some baseline,
Yes, sir.
aren't you? You're getting that transition.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So your goal is 90%?
Yes, ma'am. Articulated in the school improvement plan for our second year is 90%.
Okay.
However, also in the deliverable, it communicates the first year will be a baseline year. So 90% was set in the blind.
Okay.
Just to finish this point, really continuously pushing accountability to increase attendance. Attendance is very, very key, not for the numbers, but for the anecdotal story that tells, which is the behavior of teachers and the lack of communication that parents and caregivers may not be giving. So really pushing that attendance is necessary, and hinged to that is this notion of communicating back home, so closing that loop. And we are finding with our teaching staff that just sheer contact home is difficult. When you're trying to contact a parent or a caregiver who has moved multiple homes within the academic year or doesn't have a phone line, really thinking creatively and making solutions, deploying our social worker, deploying our campus administrator about how we go to those homes, about how we go to those spaces to communicate the message. So we don't see that as an obstacle. We see that as an opportunity to do something quite different to meet the needs of our scholars. And lastly, academics, looking at the hard data, we've got some great successes, but in the context of turnaround, we still have a long way to go. So there's a lot of numbers on the page. I took the liberty to highlight in green and red. Green, the successes, red, the areas where we need to improve. If you look at grades 7 and 8, you'll see the 10-11 year and the 11-12 year, which was our observation year in the data. Contrasted with that, you'll see our actual data. So if you look at grade 7, you'll see that there was a goal for the 2013 school year of 25% as articulated in our school improvement plan. You'll see that we were shy of that goal with 19.5%. However, you'll see that in language arts and in mathematics that we were mixed. So we did not meet language arts goals, but we did meet math goals, which resulted on the average of not meeting that goal for 7th grade. Quite different at the 8th grade. You'll see that we met our goal with a goal of 21, and we exceeded it with 28.4%, excuse me. And then it's disaggregated language arts and mathematics underneath. At high school, you'll see that we met and actually exceeded both goals with the exception of biology 10. So with English 10, we actually received a 51% passing. Our goal was 37. For algebra, we received a 26% passing. Our goal was 24. If you move to the next column under 13-14, you can see those goals for this academic year. Certainly because we exceeded 6 out of 9, we will have to recalibrate and continue to push that bar higher, but again, trying to set the goals more realistically. And then overall at our graduation percentage, the year before in the observation year, 70% of Arlington graduates graduated. However, 40% of those graduates graduated with a waiver. This year, under our model, we don't grant waivers. And so we had 50% graduation rate with 100% of those graduates who went up for the Core 40 diploma with 100% without a waiver. If we disaggregate the sort of formative data of growth. So we didn't sort of rest on our laurels and say, hey, we made 6 out of 9 indicators. We feel really good about that. Because if we look at that data, we'll see we have a long, long way to go. And in the work of turnaround is incremental steps and looking at the long game, right? Starting with culture, second attendance, and then pushing for academics. So if we look at our formative assessment, this is the NWEA data that came out in the spring of last year. We can see highlighted the growth percentile. We need to make more growth in 7th to 8th grade reading. Obviously, as we see up here, that was our weakness, and that's what dragged us down from hitting indicators at both 7th and 8th grade. Also, 8th grade mathematics, we need to push higher. There have been some successes in the 9th grade into high school. We see significant growth, and 97%. Our scholars are performing at the 97% growth percentile compared to their peers who are performed the same way. In reading, 99% growth percentile. In English, Same situation, we're having more fragmentation of success, and we need to continuously push the rigor. So in English 10, 74% percentile. However, in English 12, we see a lower percentile. Now, if you look back at the attendance data, you'll see some commonalities, right? So 12th grade attendance was abysmal. Thus, the academic outcomes were abysmal, right? And so we're seeing a lot of triangulation of data points to be very intentional about what kind of systems we refine. Looking at high school math, the same thing, 82% growth percentile, 97% growth percentile, but algebra, struggling, and we've got to work on it. We made some significant moves in that regard. Just to highlight the summary of the data, at the middle school level, we're seeing significant gains at 7th grade math, 9th grade reading. 99th percentile in 9th grade. We have a successful first-year teacher who grew those students 2 grade levels. But contrast that with 7th grade reading, 8th grade math, 8th grade reading, not good enough, and we have to keep pushing. If we look at the high school, we see a similar story. We're seeing successes across the board, but we're also seeing areas where we need to improve, particularly Algebra 1 and English 12.
Can I just ask a really quick question? So I was looking at your first one with NWEA, specifically the reading grade equivalent. So your students in 7th grade, typically, it looks like in reading that they made a year's growth. They were like a 4th grade average. Am I reading that right?
You are. Yes, ma'am.
And now they're in 5th grade.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're working with a situation in which students are at least 2 years behind when you have them. And we're working to catch them up, or 3 years actually.
Yes, ma'am.
And working to catch them up. Can you talk a little bit about some things that you're putting in place that actually help with the acceleration of that literacy?
Excellent question. That was my next slide. So these are some of the structures that we're putting in place to hold teachers accountable. What we're finding in turnaround work, which I think translates into the public education space in general, is that adults like to do a lot of talking and not a lot of doing sometimes. They struggle, not because they intentionally want to not do, it's because they sometimes don't know how to do, or they don't have someone supporting them and simultaneously holding them accountable to doing. And at Ed Power, we are about talking the walk. And so we've put in some supports to push that. So great question, Superintendent. What we do is we have a very intentional, we have a lot of intentionality around our scope and sequence and our curriculum building. We also put in lesson plan feedback cycles. So our leaders have to review lesson plan feedback a week in advance. So teachers have to post their lessons in advance. We backwards design, so they have to start with the assessment to ensure they are teaching what's on that assessment, and that assessment is aligned to standards. Furthermore, we have our leaders go in and observe each week and give feedback within 24 hours. So there's constant recalibration on what that particular teacher or those team of teachers, whether horizontally or vertically, what they need to calibrate. Next, we have formal evaluations, performance growth plans. We also do gradebook audits, and we do parent call log audits. So all of those systems, and I'm not getting specifically at reading, but I'm trying to create what kind of context of supports and accountability that we have built in to ensure that if teachers are dropping the ball, that we're giving them the supports and we're having those hard conversations about fit, because quite simply we don't have time if teachers aren't aligned to the kind of systems we put on the table.
So I don't disagree with any of that you just said. I was just wondering what kind of programs, or well, really not even programs, what kinds of things you're putting in place to address literacy with the students.
We're doing a couple of things. First, as pertains to Title I, we put in another infusion of reading instruction for our kids when we find that they're behind. We also extend the school day and use both traditional didactic instruction as well as blended instruction to try to boost their reading skills. We just got a grant from the Federal Department of Education, a literacy grant, and so we brought in a national urban reading specialist, Augusta Mann, moved here from Phoenix, Arizona, to help us to refine those strategies. And so to Tiffany's point, we put those things in place, but honestly, if we put them in place without the kind of oversight activities that we do to coach and guide really young teachers who are at this work, it just wouldn't be successful. So I think it's not just the infusion of additional supports for kids, it's also how we are meaningfully coaching and directing those teachers and providing accountability that's, I think, going to make the difference.
Most definitely you have to have the two combined.
Yep.
But I was just interested in particular about your literacy pieces that you were putting in place. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, question, Andrea?
You mentioned the teacher whose students achieved 2 grade levels in growth.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you in a position to keep that teacher from being lured away to other schools and?
Get off that slide.
and
Get off that slide.
To possible.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hoping that you are in that position, and I'd love to know who that teacher is.
Thank you. I think this teacher is very committed to the turnaround work. This teacher specifically sought out the turnaround work, and the teacher's brand new in the profession. So it comes with a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, and we see a lot of that at Arlington High School. There are a lot of younger teachers. A majority of our teachers have been teaching for 5 years or under. They bring a lot of energy, a lot of zeal, but they also bring a lot of inexperience. So I think, not to negate this teacher's success, because I think there were some powerful things that I saw in the classroom, but I think also the buy-in on the systems that were put on the table and following those systems with fidelity were the most significant. When this teacher struggled and was blind just because this teacher didn't know what they didn't know, they leaned on the systems, and we are seeing that teachers who successfully have that relational trust, which was mentioned earlier in the meeting, as we're building and inculcating this notion of relational trust, and you have to lean on your colleague who may have a little bit more wisdom, we're seeing gains in that way. I don't know if I can give away her name.
Well, that's okay, but do you have the ability to offer that teacher more money should he or she be offered another position? Do you have that flexibility now?
Absolutely.
What do you know now that you didn't know when you began about this kind of a project, Marcus, or it doesn't matter? I mean, and maybe I just asked that because when we went into this, it was about a 3-year process, and it was very difficult. And we knew something had to happen, and what should we know that you know now that we didn't know when this all started to unfold and you took responsibility for these children and their lives?
I appreciate the way you nuanced our naivete about the work. We know a couple things. First, there was a real cycle around attendance that we had no clue about. This is actually our 3rd year of operation. Remember that we were in observation year in year 1. So we're back for our 3rd year at Arlington High School, and we just had no clue that there was a culture around not coming to school and that we had to deploy specific staff to tighten that up. There were kids being counted who were not being served. And from our standpoint, we don't want to count kids who we're not going to serve. And so under the circumstances, we had to deploy real staff, social workers, school police, to be able to figure out where our kids are and whether or not they're being served. Not necessarily to drag them back kicking and screaming in Arlington, but find a place to be served somewhere, whether it is any of the great options that exist for them in Marion County. So first and foremost, we had no idea that there just was horrific attendance accountability in this particular school. What we found, though, is that accountability system was incongruent with what the district mandated for the school, right? And so it wasn't so much about the district was off the rails, the school was off the rails. And so making the staff in the building really attend to whether or not kids are present and being served was a hurdle that I think we hadn't really contemplated. We knew that safety was a huge issue. Because we had been there and we had felt as adults the kind of intimidation that was going on in the corridors, and so we knew we needed to deploy a staff. I'm not convinced that we were as aware of the level of mental health challenges that are present in the school, for which I just don't know any kind of teacher ed or administrative licensing program that leads to the level of mental health preparation that is necessary when you are confronting this type of student population. And so we knew that we needed to stabilize the school, make the hallways safe, make the campus safe for our students. We had no idea we would see the continuum of not just psychosocial dysfunction, but real criminality, narcotics, violence, even child pornography and sex abuse. And so fortunately, we had real cops on the campus. Our director of security is a former deputy chief of police for the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. And so fortunately, we had the right people who were able to respond to some of those dysfunctions. But I have to tell you, that's just flip of the coin, because I could have just as easily hired non-police trained security guards who would have been totally inept and totally inadequate for what they were facing. And so keeping those kids safe, it was a bigger challenge than I think we faced. The other thing is this work is done by babies, in the profession at least, right? And so Tiffany spoke to the aggregate impact on families when you use words like turnaround and takeover, but there's also an impact on licensed professionals, right, who are concerned about stability of the organization. And so when we serve, this teacher that had this growth was a first-year teacher. And so the kind of professional development infrastructure you have to wrap around such a young force is considerable. And so we bring our teachers back almost a month before school opens to train them in planning and procedures and in student engagement and assessment, because they don't have it. We need them to look like 5th and 10th year teachers, even though they're 1st and 3rd year teachers. Our continual professional development cycle, maintained and managed by Donna Stevens, our chief academic officer, is considerable. We have a whole group of folks who have every week professional development with staff on an ongoing basis to help them sharpen and refine what is necessary, because no matter whether they're coming out of traditional teacher ed programs or they're in some kind of transition to teaching programs, they all need monumental supports in order to be effective, right? And so I don't think we had a sense going in that we would have to do the work with folks so young and experienced as we did the work.
Marcus, one of the questions we became very obvious, the way the turnaround law was written, takeover, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
chronically failing schools, how you deal with it, is that we were looking at almost all high schools, one middle school.
Yes.
It became apparent that there was a machine producing, in other words, the problem became so large by the time the high school was students behind over and over
That's right.
years. Would you, if school got in trouble in the future, would you prefer a K-12, some kind of alignment? Because they didn't suddenly get 4 and 3 and 2 years behind in reading.
That's right.
And passed along. This, they just put on your doorstep suddenly at some point, and they bring these educational deficiencies.
Sure.
Is it, talk about that a little bit. I mean, it seems like it's hard to turn around at the back end if we haven't done some radically different. Yeah, upstream we need some
Right.
work. I mean, how would you think about that?
Let me nuance that a little bit. We're in our 10th year of operation on the charter side of the house, and our intention was to start a college preparatory high school. We progressively grew younger, down to 8th and then down to 7th, and when we moved to 6th, the board said, "Isn't that enough?" And I said, "At some point we might be enrolling embryos, so I'm not going to make you any promises right now." We're in our first year now, in year 10 of serving kindergarten.
Less attendance problems.
Imagine.
You kind of know where they're going to be.
And so we have kindergartners in our network for the first time, and are seeing the monumental struggle that kids face just coming in at 5. Some of our 6-year-olds who are coming into 1st grade, never having been to preschool, never having been to a kindergarten. And so what we've found all along the way is the problems that we really face at grades 8 and 9 are not 8 and 9 problems. They're 4 and 5 problems, right? These are, kids can understand, honestly, the abstract thinking at that point. They have problems with fundamental skills, right? So fluency is a huge issue, and elementary school is the point at which you knock that out. Not just because it's developmentally appropriate for kids intellectually, but also emotionally. Like, kids glom on to the strategies for fluency in 3rd grade in ways they just don't by grade 9. And so, yes, I would answer your question by saying we're really looking at the fruit without addressing the root. And so part of the hurdle at Arlington, I can't speak for Edison or CSUSA, but part of the problem at Arlington is we have no way of articulating strategies down, right? And so this will be a perpetual problem of receiving kids at various stages of dysfunction and then having to fix it, as opposed to taking some great data, I think, that we find at the secondary level and having some trickle into the elementary schools in a way that is collaborative and means something for the school. And I don't know that that necessarily means that we need to co-manage it. I just think that having some intentional link from one level to the other would make a significant difference in how we're serving.
Are you feeling that cooperation?
And I'd argue that given the way the law is structured and given the way the MOUs had to come together as quickly as they did, that IPS is being as cooperative as they can possibly be. Dr. White certainly indicated, not just to us personally, but to this board, that his intention was to be a competitor with Turnaround Schools. I think he made good on that promise. And so from our standpoint, enrollment is not our bailiwick. The board didn't invite us into the school to go out and recruit IPS kids. The board brought us in to establish the kind of academic systems that led to great outcomes for the kids who choose that school. And so I believe in terms of the operational issues, whether it's buildings and grounds and transportation, IPS has been as cooperative as they can be in terms of serving that school as well as they try to serve all the schools that remain with the district.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have Charter Schools USA. I believe the board has the presentation.
Good morning or afternoon. Are we to afternoon yet? We're getting close. I'm Keith Burke. I'm the principal at TC Howe and representing Charter Schools USA today. A lot of our data, just going into some of the things Marcus gave, we were able to present a little bit earlier a lot of the attendance data and a lot of our discipline data in our prior meetings. So we're gonna probably save you a little bit of time, go through a little bit more of our academic data, but we do want to indicate some of the things that Marcus definitely talked about. When we came into the school, we know that leading indicators are culture, our attendance, our truancy, and we had to get those processes and procedures in place first. That was definitely our focus as we came in. Lagging indicators being academics. We know that the test scores, we're going to work to get to continual improvement, but again, those are lagging indicators, and we knew that coming in. If I could go ahead and go to the next slide. Do I need to? Don't have a Vanna with me. Okay, this here just talks about, again, when our students came in, deficiencies that they had. We noticed at TC Howe, it was mid-year, with our SIG funding, we were able to get a credit recovery person full-time. Manuel did that from the start. But if you look at the amount of credits that we recovered for our students, 151 at Emmerich Manual, 101 at TC Howe, 58 total students recovered credits, and 73 at Emmerich Manual. And I can tell you with TC Howe, of those 58, 53 of them were seniors that had to have those credits to graduate. They were deficient coming in. There was no way to get them through in the traditional school day without a credit recovery program. So we had to put those procedures and processes in place, and thankfully for our SIG dollars, we were able to do that to give the kids the wraparound support they needed. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. Okay, if you look at our I-STEP comparisons, we compared the 2011 to 2012 year with the 2012-13 year. And if you look at Emma Donnins in 7th grade, at the top, the ELA I-STEP, you're looking at in 2011-2012, 31.8 passed. In 2012-2013, 36.1 passed. TC Howe in 2011-2012, 44.6 in the 7th grade, 45.2 in the 8th grade. I'm not going to go through all these, But again, you can see what we talked about. We had some growth, which we were very happy about, because I will tell you, we didn't serve the same kids. It's a different group of kids, so we felt strong about our growth. Are we where we need to be? I concur totally with Ed Power. We're not where we want to be, but we also understand that they're lagging leading indicators. So we want to be 100% proficient, of course, but we also know we're meeting our students where they come in and continuing the growth that way. Move to our next slide, and this is our math comparisons. In certain patches, we had some growth. Math was an area of concern with us as well. I will say this, the seventh graders coming in, one thing Marcus hit on, and I think that it is important. When those kids come in, we get them where they are. And I do think what Marcus said is exactly right. Has done great with building and grounds, and they've done great with transportation. But those those elementary kids are their kids, and they want to keep those kids. Don't fault them for that, for wanting to keep those kids. So what we have to do is we have to create a program where students want to come to us based on our achievement. So the collaboration within the elementary schools not necessarily been there, but they have done a good job of servicing our other needs. Everything within the contract, they've done their job. But again, I'm not going to read through individuals. You guys can all read, but we did have some highlights. If you're to look at the percentage of students that pass both ELA and math, we did have an increase at both schools if you combine everything together. So we had an increase in both schools, slight increase, very slight, but it was an increase. And again, we're happy to see that. We're happy to see that growth, and definitely pushing forward to make sure that we're improving. This is just a highlight of each individual school. At Emma Donnan, they're using their benchmark data to place students in additional reading and math intervention courses, again, with them being behind. Their tiered reading courses and mandatory after-school tutoring. We use benchmark data to place our students in small groups. And again, NWEA benchmark data is done not just on the ELA and math. We also do that in our science and social studies as well, to ensure that we're getting a true picture of the student, not just the ELA and math, which we want to make sure that we have the well-rounded picture.
So it didn't mention social studies there, but you said you have
We
social studies as well?
we do social studies as well.
And do you have, maybe the next time you present?
We can give you the data.
NWEA data, that would be.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we use NWEA within our middle schools, and then within our high schools, we use Acuity, is what we use. At Howell, all of our students are placed in 2 reading and math courses, and what that is that's either enrichment or a remedial. So it's basically that we're pushing forward with our students that are at grade level or above, and then with our students that are below grade level, we are giving them the opportunity to remediate. So, you have to, it's a tough combination to accelerate and remediate at the same time, because you have to accelerate in the math class in their grade level appropriateness, but then you have to remediate within the others. So it's a situation where we have to make sure they get those core concepts. We have them within that. We have them grouped based on NWEA data, which is a flexible grouping within our NWEA scores. So that's something that we do to ensure that our students are making it. Again, similar situation where we're testing within history, science, doing the NWEA test on those other areas, so that we're not just focusing on the language arts and math. We're focusing on the whole educational process. We use the benchmark data as well, and targeted tutoring after school. That is a mandatory as well for us. Tutoring after school or SWAG Saturday, our students are required to spend 3 additional hours that are below grade level. Ms. Ritz, as you know, when we're talking about the reading, you have to spend the time to do it. You have to spend the time to do it. When you're behind in reading, you cannot make it up just in the traditional school day. Students that are behind, they're not going to grow in the just traditional school day. You can do some things to get some growth, but the fact of the matter is that it is about time and about spending it with them. So we offer opportunities after school, and on Saturdays as well. Every Saturday from 9 to 12. After school every day until 5:30. We're out at 3:45. There is tutoring going on. In Emmanuel, they're double blocking their students in Algebra Enrichment and Algebra 1. Similar situation to TC Howe. double blocking their students in reading enrichment according to the test data, and using Acuity to gauge where our students are, make sure that we're getting our students who haven't passed the English into additional classes, the math into additional classes to support them. The NWA benchmarks, we use those as well, and same thing, all the different subject areas, we're making sure that we focus again on the whole student. Okay, that's it. That's it for us. Again, we focused on the last presentation more on our culture. This one we wanted to tell you where we are. Is it where we want to be? No. Are we making progress? Absolutely. Absolutely. The culture in the building, I know at least one of you, maybe two of you had the opportunity to tour TC Howell. I know one of you was at Emma Donnan, and a couple of you went to Manual as well. Culture in the building, I think, has definitely shifted in all the buildings. It's now a place where learning can occur, and we have to kick it in right now with the learning. We're doing similar things with our professional development piece. We have professional development throughout the day at all 3 schools, and after school as well, at least once a week. We do professional development with our students, with our teachers, to focus on our student needs. It is just part of our day. And I can tell you this, as Marcus stated, turnaround work is definitely difficult work. It's hard work. It's a lot of hours. We're doing everything we can to ensure that these students succeed. Questions, guys?
I had the opportunity to tour the schools along with some of my colleagues here. And the numbers are important, the data is important, but when we sat down with students who were there prior to Charter USA coming in and are there now, their testimony was just passionate about the changes that you made in school culture, the focus on achievement. The whole school literally is turned around, to use that terminology. And so I would ask other partners if they could invite us to their schools. I think some of us would be out there to look at it. Sometimes we get hung up on political dynamics and numbers and achievement scores, and we forget the children in the school and the scholars, as someone pointed out, and other learners. And getting into the schools is really important for us to do as policymakers. So thank you for providing that opportunity for us.
I wanted to add, when I gave a presentation on data, I just think if the kids don't know where they're at, they don't know where they're going. You can't plan that race for them if they don't know where they're starting from. And I had the opportunity, and I asked, the teachers were so nice and welcoming. The kids were so nice and welcoming. But I would say to the kids, what are you reading right now? What are you working on? And I'd say, what's your NWEA score? And they would know it. And to me, that's impressive. They know where they're at. And I'd say, well, how much are you supposed to grow this year? Well, and some of them knew, some of them didn't. But they all knew their NWEA score. They all knew where they were at. They all knew that they had to make progress on that. And that not only was the culture has now been set, but those next steps of now the culture's there, now we can start to grow. And
Yeah, part of our programming is data chats with our students and with our parents. So if they don't know where they're at, that was one thing that was interesting. A lot of our students claimed when they came in that they didn't know where they were. So it's good definitely to have that real conversation. And let me just tell you something, a tough conversation with a child that thinks that they're a senior. And when you walk in the door and they have 16 credits. So, that was definitely a challenging conversation to have with some too, and parents saying that they had never heard that. That was interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we going to listen learning?
Thank you.
Edison,
Good morning.
Before you start, I want to compliment you on the filling out of the templates in great detail, so thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. Thank you, and it's good to be here again. I think the last time we presented was in July, and I think we have at least half of the board members that are new since then, and so it's a pleasure to meet you and to have an opportunity to talk to you about the work that we're doing in Gary with Theodore Roosevelt College and Career Academy. My name is Todd McIntyre. I'm Senior Vice President for Operations with Edison Learning, and I have with me the Senior Director of Achievement for Edison Learning that oversees our work in Indiana. That's Vanessa Ronquetto. And in the spirit of building capacity, we've asked two of our school leaders to come with us today, Principal Donna Henry and the Director of Alternative Education, Ian Miller. And they're both going to be speaking to you briefly about some of the fantastic results that we have to share with you today. I'm going to have to mind my tongue, or I'm going to steal all the thunder right here at the beginning from my colleagues. So I will just give you a couple of brief tidbits of history, particularly for those board members that are new. Edison Learning has been working in Indiana for 14 years. We have 3 major partnerships that we're working in right now, one with the Perry Township Schools, where we have managed in the past, and we now provide educational services to 2 of their schools, which have been 4-star schools repeatedly over the last several years. We also have a partnership, we're in our 2nd year, with Marion Community Schools, where we're providing a lower level of turnaround support for schools that have received SIG funding in that district. And we've worked with 2 schools there that are getting great results. And then, of course, this is now our 3rd year working in the Roosevelt School in Gary. And so I just wanted to give you that context as we get started. As you know, and as has been stated before, we spent the first year evaluating Gary Roosevelt. We had more than 50 colleagues, professionals, and consultants that did a thorough evaluation of all of the academic and operational programs associated with the school. And from that, we came up with our 4-year turnaround plan. The turnaround plan is based upon Edison Learning's design, but it is perfectly aligned with the federal turnaround principles that are outlined in the School Improvement Grant program, and what we're using to make sure that we're using federal funds appropriately, that we're responding to the requirements of DOE and of the State Board of Education. Those principles are listed here, and I think you know these. These are about building leadership capacity, providing for a safe and secure environment, making sure that we are providing coaching and feedback to teachers, that teachers are focusing not just about teaching but on learning, so they're constantly evaluating where their students are and whether they are excelling, moving forward in the areas that we are expecting them to do, and that they're able to monitor their own learning. And making sure that we look at school in a new way, looking at how we organize the day, how teacher time is organized, the different options that students have to come into the school. We're going to talk a little bit about those, where we have an alternative program, we have a 5th-year senior program, we have credit recovery options. So we've really opened up a menu of services that will appeal to students depending upon where they are and what their needs are. And with that, I didn't give away any of the exciting stuff. I'm going to let Ms. Ronquetto do that now.
Well, good morning, Superintendent Retz and board members. I get the pleasure this morning of kind of highlighting for us what our successes were in year 1. And so, as Ms. Vicker mentioned, really what we wanted to do is pull out what are some of our key successes that in our community, all of our staff, all of our students, and our community could articulate. And how do we get that in the environment so that we know what our goals are? So we pulled out 5 of our most notable successes as a leadership team, and I just want to present them quickly today. We had an overall 9.5% increase in our ELA scores in iStep Plus, and a 3.5 overall increase in math scores. We're very happy with that. Our credit recovery for last year resulted in additional 41 students earning a Core 40 diploma from the students that were on track and ready for graduation last year. We have seen significant growth with our students with disabilities in our reading interventions, which is Read 180 and System 44. We've been working very closely with our consultants to implement those programs with the highest level of fidelity that we could possibly imagine, and our results are pushing us forward rapidly on how we can meet more students' needs with that high fidelity implementation. And we're really very happy that we were able to retain a high level of our staff moving into year 2, so that we're not starting from the beginning again or starting all over training staff. So our 92% retention rate was very high in a turnaround environment, because as we've all acknowledged earlier, it's not for the weak or faint of heart. We wanted to call out really that we have had 0 findings in our special education audit. So we did have 1 complaint that was resolved very timely with the department this year. We had no mediation or due process, and we really wanted to celebrate those with our staff and acknowledge the hard work that put into that. We select a theme every year for all of our Edison Learning Partnership schools, and our theme this year, selected by Principal Henry and her staff, is hitting it out of the park. And so I just want to say today, now those results are really demonstrating that we are going to continue to hit it out of the park. Our report today is really arranged around the turnaround report that you're requesting every month this year from us. When we presented in July, we gave you kind of a summary of our last year. So this year we're going to try to, hit on what is asked in the performance indicators, and these are the key pieces that we'll be digging in today. And as Mr. McIntyre indicated, are readily aligned, closely aligned to the turnaround principles. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Henry so she can get into some of the details as she leads her staff every day.
I'll do this. Okay, thanks. One of the things that I'm most pleased about the 2012-2013 school year are our ISTEP results. As Ms. Ronquetto indicated, we saw a 9.5% overall gain for ELA and 3.5% for math. And this work, the groundwork that we've done, really impacts how the students perform when they sit for the ECA as they matriculate into the high school, and it ultimately affects the graduation rate. Next, we have some of the achievement strategies that we are focusing on for this school year. We've identified the interventions of Read 180 and System 44 to address the reading deficiency, the literacy deficiencies that we've seen with our students, especially with our students with special needs. In the grades 7 through 9, we've implemented a blended learning program where students go through 4 modes of learning. They receive personal coaching, foundational learning, have opportunities to collaborate, as well as deal with conceptual learning. Additionally, we encourage our families to participate in their child's education. Instead of having report card pickup, we hold what's called a student learning conference. And during this time, the student sits with the teacher and the parent to discuss their progress throughout the quarter and to set goals for the next quarter to say, why did I receive a B in Algebra 1? When I took my benchmark assessment in September and October, how did I see a growth of 3% in the particular subject area? And so we really encourage the parents to participate in those conversations so that they have a better understanding of what their child experiences on a day-to-day basis at the school. Particularly as with the other operators, as they stated, we've had a truancy, and attendance is definitely an issue. And so to combat that issue, we have hired an attendance, a truancy officer for the school year, so that there's some type of follow-up for those students who are missing, those students who are not being serviced on a day-to-day basis. And we've been fortunate enough to have the Gary Police Department truly support us in those efforts. Read 180, as I stated, is one of the reading interventions we've put in place for the school year. 68% of our students with special needs who were enrolled in Read 180 saw an average gain of 97 Lexile points. And students who are enrolled in System 44, which is to help students develop comprehension when it comes to phonemic awareness, those students saw an average gain of 105 points, where the range may be literally 50 to 100 points. And so the success was so great that we did use our funds for this school year to purchase additional licenses. Definitely. The highest for the grades, for grade 12, it goes up to 1,300 for the Lexile point. When we look at the Scholastic Reading Inventory, which is what the system that we use in order to determine where our students are with their current reading level, this equates to a 4th or 5th grade level. You're welcome. 20% of our population are students with special needs, and so we really want to make sure that we intervene with those students based on what they are demonstrating as an area for growth, and their average Lexile growth for those students who were enrolled in Read 180 and System 44 was between 96 and 106 Lexile points, and as I stated, usually you really see 50 to 100 points, and that's pretty much a wide range, but they were in the upper tier of that growth range, and so that's something to be very excited about. The success that we saw was so great that we also did purchase additional licenses for those students for this school year. Achieve 3000 is a way for us to intervene in the other subject areas, math, social studies, of course, reading, and science. They use this program in order to get students to see nonfiction text on their Lexile and their reading level. And they have the opportunity to write and to respond to various current articles and different readings throughout the school day. Students demonstrated a mean gain of 59.9 Lexile points, and they exceeded that average by 15.5 points. At the beginning of the year, 23 of 146 seniors were on track for graduation, and through our credit recovery program, we were able to add 41 students to the graduation to the graduating class. What we've seen is that the current class of 2014, their deficiencies were greater than the class of 2013, and so we needed to address that immediately. As juniors, they did have credit recovery options available in their schedules, and this year they are available in their schedules as well. In order to address the percentage of students who are overage and under-accredited, we do have a fifth-year program where they are able to take classes online and have access to teachers in order to make up the credits that are needed to receive a Core 40 diploma.
Before you go on, I just want to let members of the board know, if they don't know, Achieve 3000 actually takes articles.
Yes, current articles.
And yes, and you can infuse them in your science and your social studies and curriculum content pieces, but they actually level them. So when you have students of lower reading level, they can get the same kind of connections and the same kind of comprehension pieces, but they actually can read the information to move forward. So it's a very impressive piece of software that has been found to make great gains in reading achievement. So
Yes.
I commend you for working with that. And I guess I also would make a comment that Scholastic also is a highly research-based piece of software information and teaching of reading that actually has shown to make specific gains as well. So I just want to commend you for having those two programs in place.
Thank you. In regards to the Scholastic Reading Inventory, we actually test students on a quarterly basis to determine what range of Lexile gains they are achieving throughout the quarter. And with Achieve 3000, one of the most powerful things is that they can all read the same article, but it's going to come to them at a level of their understanding, and so they can participate in a rich discussion around the same topics. Attendance is a huge issue, and we have our Director of Alternative Education with us today, and he's going to explain the processes that we've put in place around discipline and attendance.
Good morning once again. As we looked at our baseline data from last year, we set some ambitious goals that were very high for our gains for this year. One of the things that we ran into last year was record issues, and we cleaned those up. Some of those were lack of transcripts, as well as just getting those things cleaned up in general. Our overall attendance last year average was 74%. If you look this year, the first 2 months of the year, we had 68% as well as 72%. And as you can see, we've already increased that from 80 to 82%. One of the things that we did, as Ms. Henry has explained earlier, is adding a school attendance officer. With that school attendance officer, he works closely, not only with the Gary Police Department, but with individual teams from each grade to check on attendance. So attendance referrals are made on as needed. For the month of August, we actually had 30 attendance referrals. Once those students are referred, parents are called, contracts are put out as well. So we are able to work more closely with those parents. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but the communication is definitely being made. At 6 and 10 unexcused absences, we're letting those parents know as well, look, they're at 6 right now, and then once again at 10, so that way there's no confusion. With the help of our resource officer as well as the Gary Police, if we do not have the correct addresses or the numbers have changed due to some students being transits, we are able to enlist the help of the community to find those parents. We can move on to behavior. If we move on to discipline, one of the things that we want to establish was a strong learning environment. And with that, it always takes time. Consistency is one of the biggest things, and you always get a little fight back with the students. Sometimes it's because they don't understand. And when they don't understand, naturally, there's that, sense of resistance. But this year, we see the change where the students are actually taking pride in the behavior and the expectations that are taking place in the classroom. We have consistency on all levels in regards to the students, teachers, administrators, and support staff. And with that consistency and that understanding, as well as the parents having that understanding, there are no big surprises. Students know the layers, they know the interventions that take place within the classroom, within the hallway, and there's conversation that is taking place throughout each of these interventions. One of the things that we also focused on was our alternative education program. We currently have 9 students who've been assigned to the alternative education program. We haven't had any students expelled at this time. With the assignment to the alternative education program, it's a student-centered, basically learning space within the school. E-courses are used, so the students are on computers, but they do receive social skills and also management skills. The students are graded every half hour and given immediate feedback. So at that time, they're able to see what's going on. If they're having a bad part of the day, it's able to get corrected so it doesn't turn into the long part of the day as well. So we've gotten, at this point, we could say that it's definitely been a success.
Thank you, and only a few more points. Of the graduating class of 2013, 65%, our goal is for 65% of the students to be enrolled in a vocational or 2 to 4 year program, and 60% of students who graduated last year have moved on to a college or military, but we're definitely on our way to reaching that goal. The hard part about it was that there was such a limited window to work with those students because of their deficiencies. I think it took quite some time for them to understand that there's a possibility that they could walk across the stage in May if they put their minds to it and completed the courses, and once they understood that, they were rolling through the courses. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that number be 65 or above for the 2013-2014 school year. Staff attendance, this is something, to be proud of, 92% retention for this school year. The work of a turnaround is not easy. It is not for anyone. I know some people think that school is school, but when you walk into a turnaround, it takes, one of our theme is hitting it out of the park, and one of our principles is you have to get your uniform dirty. And so it's going to take everyone to roll up their sleeves and, get in there and really work with the students and do some follow-up. And so the fact that 92% of the staff wanted to come back says a lot about what their dedication to the mission, says a lot about how they feel treated as a teacher, and the coaching and support layers that are in place at the school. As always, there are areas of focus for improvement. There are always areas of challenges. Once again, the credit recovery piece will continue to be a challenge for this graduating class and possibly for the graduating class of 2015. Ultimately, we want to combat that earlier so that it does not become an issue. We don't want to always have to play catch up. The flex model, the blended learning model, we have a very technology-forward generation with us, and so, and that's really the wave of the future. As they begin to enter college, we want to help them become independent learners, and so the use of the blended learning model will definitely help propel them in that manner, and definitely getting them to be independent thinkers. Our 5th year program, right now we have 35 students enrolled. There was a possibility that 85 of them would come in to recover those credits, but the 35 who are in the program as of now, they are working diligently, and some of them have already finished at this point. Attendance and truancy, it continues to be an issue. However, as you saw, Mr. Miller, he explained the attendance rate for this current school year, cleaning up the rosters and scrubbing the data all the way through. We are really on the way to that 92% goal, and it will continue to be a challenge area for us, and we will continue to work our partnerships with the Gary Police Department to make sure that we're always on the up and up in that way. Behavior management, we have an extremely volatile student population, and we have to teach them what school was, and we have to teach them how to learn. And so they are coming around, but it will be a challenge, and we will continue to work at that challenge. Scrubbing the data to see where the infractions are happening, what are the actual infractions, what do we do to combat it, what interventions will we put in place, and to continue with the alternative education program. As always, the building renovations, it's an older building. Athletics is huge, not only in Gary, Indiana, but in Gary, Indiana, it's a huge part of their culture, and we respect the history of Roosevelt and everything that they've accomplished in the years before us. And so if we could have the opportunity to rebuild that athletic program, it would do wonders to our enrollment and to the success of the school. As always, I invite you all to come out to witness the great things that are happening in Roosevelt. I cannot be happier with the start of the school year. We're ending the first quarter, and as Ms. Ronquetto pointed out, there are many things to celebrate. There are great things going on, and if you have the opportunity, please stop by and we'll take you on a tour through the school. But I thank you this morning for your attention. Yes.
The College Eager Exploration, is that the free survey that's offered to the state of Indiana?
The students actually participate in that survey. However, we purchased a program, Naviance, and what Naviance does is it begins the students to helps the students to begin to track what colleges they've explored earlier in their high school career. We ran a summer program for our incoming freshman transitions, and what we've seen is that students don't understand how the credit system works. They don't understand the requirements for a Core 40 diploma. And so we want to have them pay attention to those things earlier on, and so that they will have a more positive experience in regards to their matriculation up through 12th grade.
Yes, Tom?
What is the highest number of credits you've seen a student recover during the course of the year?
I have seen a student recover 9 classes, which equates to maybe 18 credits.
While taking other courses?
While taking other courses. And we did, like as I stated, this is during the school day, so we've embedded credit recovery in their schedule, as well as offering it for night school. And since it's online, they have access to it. If they have internet access at home, they're able to access the courses online, and they also have access to a teacher until 8 Central, I believe.
What's the expectation when they get put in a credit recovery block? Is there a minimum you expect them to do while they're there?
Depending on the number of credits that they have to recover, we have a monitor, and our 11th and 12th grade academy director, he monitors this process. And so if a student has maybe 3 classes to make up, we assign them one at a time and monitor the number of lessons they're expected to complete per week. Through the system, we can monitor their progress, not only how often they log onto the system, but the completion rate of the lessons. And so we don't just send them out to sit down and log onto the computers to do the lessons. They meet with their counselor on a regular basis. They meet with the credit recovery monitor on a regular basis, as well as their academy director.
I may have just not understood the stat, but do you know the number of students that actually graduated last year because of credit recovery?
The total number is 64.
41
because of credit recovery, and then
Okay,
64 was the total number
so
of
that's
graduates.
not just getting a core 40, that's
Oh.
they wouldn't have graduated.
They would not have graduated at all.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
George Washington, we have lead partner monthly updates, reports were given to you. I believe we do have partners in the audience in case you have any questions regarding their reports. Seeing none, I really want to thank the lead partners for participating and working with the template, and we'll just keep refining that and getting the information that we need, and we look forward to hearing from you at a later date. George Washington High School, an IPS update regarding the IPS RFP process with regard to the approved intervention of this board. So George Washington.
The mayor not presenting, is that not?
The mayor is not presenting.
Okay.
Another point, we should probably welcome our newest superintendent to the state. Welcome, newest superintendent to the
Dr.
state.
Farabee.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. 3 things I want to address. First of all, I want to introduce myself, Louis Farabee, Superintendent, Indianapolis Public Schools. This is not quite the introduction I wanted, but I'm glad to be here and looking forward to a very positive working relationship. The second item is on the agenda. It's listed that we will provide an update on the RFP process for the intervention strategy or model, if you will, at George Washington Community High School. Given the time-sensitive nature of the work that needs to be done at George Washington, I have provided a recommendation to our commissioners, which they will take action on this evening for Ms. Patricia Davenport to be the consultant to provide those services. So I didn't want the perception to be that we were belaboring the process and what needed to take place. So once action is taken this evening, we'll move forward with the model as previously presented. The final thing that I want to say is that I am very committed. I want you to understand clearly my drive for the transformational work that needs to occur at George Washington, but across all of the schools in Indianapolis Public Schools. So again, pleasure meeting you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Farabee. Linda?
think I can still say good morning, but we're about 2 minutes away. But thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of the things that are happening at Washington. We did submit our monthly report, and if you have any questions, we'll take those. But we were asked to present our progress with regards to the 8-step process that was approved by the Indianapolis Public School Board and endorsed by you at the last meeting. So we have 3 goals. The first goal was to develop a comprehensive literacy initiative plan. And so what we've kind of done is put together a menu of options. And as we look at our students individually, recommend, implement, and monitor options for our students as appropriate for their individual